Hello, I'm Nick Guida with Tamarack, and I wanted to welcome you to another episode of Flying with the Founder. Today's topic is going to be about cold weather operation. You know, we go to our recurrent training every year, and we don't always talk about really getting into depth about the cold weather limitations, but there's so many that come into play. It's the end of the season. We got a lot of snow coming, a lot of ice, especially where we're from. There's oil, temperature requirements, limits, there's battery, even the cabin, inside the cabin, the temperature prior to taking off or even starting. There's a lot of things that come into play during cold weather operations. What the limitations are, what are your flap settings once you have it on, what are your hold times, all those things have to be refreshed. So it's important to refresh on all this stuff and know this, go through your limitation sections. The other thing is, make sure that when you're planning a trip, unless you're planning to go from a cold place to a really warm place, you're thinking about what's it going to look like at the other end. Neil Singer at CJP is always talking about factors associated with landing distances that you need to put on to your typical landing distances out of the AFM. So the advisory section at the end is where the AFM is where all this data is. So go back and look at those. A little bit contaminated runway, a little slush, a little ice, a little snow, and it really can affect the way your distances to land. So just look at that. And remember, this is generally when you're going to have problems taking off and landing. So before you go and on your trip, make sure you just really review what your landing distances are going to look like with your factors. And then the other thing is, get yourself psyched up when you're taxiing on the runway. What do you do on top of your normal checklist or brief to supplement for cold weather? So I use the Hilltap method, Hilltap, Hilltap. So hot, ignitions, lights, transponder, autopilot. And I use it and I augment it in the cold weather to add a couple things. So hot items, instead of just saying hot, pitot coming on, I'll really focus on what I'm doing. Okay, hot, and then I know what my de-ice is going to be, and then I'll think about cross flow. If I lose an engine, need cross flow. Some guys like to turn it on initially, but that's up to you. So hot ignitions, even if I have a FADEC engine, I'll pretend like I'm turning on the ignitions just so I stay sharp, because I've been flying a lot of different planes. Lights on either side of the control yoke, lights, transponder, autopilot, and annunciator panel. And then anticipate. The key here is anticipate what could go wrong. One time I had a gear didn't want to come up. I took off in horrible weather, it all froze up and it kind of came up and then didn't want to stay up. So I had to cycle the gear again, and it threw me off my game. Because I wasn't expecting it. So from now on, when I take off in weather, even a little bit questionable, I think, hey, my gear may not want to stay up. I may want to cycle the gear. So those are the things that, get your head in the game. Think about the flaps. I'm not allowed to use my flaps because I have de-ice level 4, fluid 4, whatever it is. And you have to get yourself into in that mode. So the whole thing is here, know your limitations, grab a cup of coffee, go through your AFM, your AFMS, all the pertinent information, your advisory section, and just get sharp, just like you are on the other things on your plane. So at the end of the day, it's all about safety and staying current. And if you like what we're doing, like, share, subscribe. Remember, Tamarack takes you further.